to sort of make up for the couple of times that I've been late. And Timmy's really sort of wanting attention. So it's probably now's a good time to show him to you. Timmy, come. Come on. He was ready a moment ago to jump up into the chair, or maybe he'll do it now. Come on. Come on. There you go. Ooh. There we go. So I actually did something different today. I drove out to the South African Triathlon Championships. Hi there, Sketi Nona. I'm not sure if I'm saying your name. Sue Cooper, hi there. Firefly, good to have you on. Let me first greet everyone before I sort of update you. Susie G, morning from Arizona. What is it like in Arizona? Is it already hot there? Caru Ross, hi. Kirsty McKenzie, good evening. Is it evening where you are, Kirsty? Jimmy Legs, hi Timmy from Colorado. Let me just show you Timmy. He's playing with a cat's toy in lieu of the cat not being here. Ira, hope you're well. I'm a little bit sunburned. I don't know if you can see that. And I've also got like a slight sunburn because I had a cap on back to front when I took photos this afternoon. Heather West, hi Nick and Timmy. Hi Heather. Chrissy Lee, hey Nick from Massachusetts. Hi Chrissy. Suzanne Saunders, hi from a cold England. Nearly 6 p.m. Yeah, it's a little bit earlier today. I was ready, sort of not needing to do much more. I just thought, well, you guys, some of you were waiting, and I thought I would just go on. Paris Jones, hi from San Francisco. Kirsty McKenzie, it's 5:50 p.m. in Scotland. Tracy, hello from Kentucky. Noel Cho, hi from Germany. It's an unusual name. Sue Cooper says, been a lovely day in the UK today. Well, that's good to hear. Sometimes when the seasons transition, you really do get lovely days. It's as though, I won't say the calm before the storm, but the good weather before the whatever the other weather, you know. Well, I've just killed a fly, and I see there's another one here. Timmy. Okay. Robin, evening, all from Staffordshire. Chilling with Byron. Hi, Tracy. Okay. Valerie Johnson from Idaho. Hi there. Beautiful here in Herefordshire. Okay, that's good to hear. Hi, Yvonne. Okay. Can you guys see Timmy? Or is the camera a little bit too low? I don't know if that's a little bit better. When I walked Timmy this evening, someone actually came up to me and said, Jeepers, is that the same dog? He looks quite stern. He looks kind of quite severe. And I said, no, it is the same dog. Anyway, this afternoon, I actually wanted to either drop him off at a friend or just leave him at home, just because it's kind of a logistically difficult scenario where there are a lot of cyclists going by, and it's not just a ordinary event, it's South African Triathlon Championships, and the worst thing that can happen is the dog runs under the bicycle and somebody's dreams are sort of, asunder. Something like someone's Olympic dreams, they've been training or whatever, and then the dog runs and the cyclist falls or something like that. So I didn't really want that to happen. Timmy, do you want to get off? Okay. So in the end, he really was insisting on going along. So I just took him along, and I thought I'll make do. If it's the worst situation, I will leave him in the car. It's not like a situation of I would leave him and go off for an hour or something. The car is really parked on the roadside. But as it turned out, there was sort of one marshal there who sort of seemed to be bored. So I kind of gave him the job to look after Timmy for a while. So it actually worked out okay. Bria Lace, Timmy looks really cute now with his little haircut. I'm still trying to get used to it. In a way, it seems like a different dog. See my TUT license to dance, love schnauzers. I have a schnauzer too named Angel. That's quite interesting. Someone in the ambulance, which is also known as the broom wagon, riding behind the cyclist, the driver stopped and said, "Hey, I've also got a schnauzer." It's quite interesting. People who have schnauzers seem to love schnauzers. Connie Lukens, good to see you. Hi there. Connie, you listened to the whole audiobook of The Craven Silence, right? I'm not confusing you with someone else. Paula Edwards, hi from Northamptonshire in the UK. So, Q, hi. I had kind of a lot of people commenting based on an exit survey on Patreon. I basically just said, well, somebody said, I've been wanting to ask questions on 3 lives and I paid to be on Patreon and you didn't catch my question. So I want to dedicate kind of the next half hour to taking your questions. Sarah Davis, hi from Ohio. So I want to kind of acknowledge you guys. I want to take some of your questions. The problem I sometimes have when I put the ball in your court is sometimes there just aren't any questions. And then I've kind of got to scramble to questions of yours that I've written down. I've kind of got to go out of YouTube to go and get them on Gmail or wherever I've sort of sent them. Someone says 12 step 7, I won't type so you can better see questions. No, you're welcome to be yourself. I just came here to help the mods. Okay. Sandra in Arizona, I have a ton of questions. Okay, well, shoot. Glory K, what is the name of the book you just showed? Okay, it's The Craven Silence. Can you see? It's the first book in the Craven Silence series. I've just completed the audiobook on Patreon, and I just want to read a little review left by, I think it was Connie, and she said, I had to pull over. Wow, it looks like my throat's already giving up. She said, I had to pull over for a few minutes during the last few minutes of the chapter. I literally got chill bumps all over as I listened to your twist. And then she just says, wow, fantastic narration, fantastic insight. So what I kind of want to announce is that the next audiobook that I'm going to be doing is The Craven Silence 2. Due to popular demand, there were a lot of people, probably almost twice as many voted for a book on Jonbenet than the Chris Watts case. So I think that the coverage I've been doing on Patreon has been quite interesting even for Chris Watts fans. Bling is the new black. Big howdy from Dallas. Happy spring. Billy No Mates. Nick, are you going to relink all of your blogs on the Shan'ann Watts case? Probably not. Just too much work for nothing. Annie Thomas, hello from sunny, warm Ontario, Canada. Bonnie Mae Cather, nice name. I bought many of your books, love them. So I put a link on YouTube. If you've, tell me what you're doing. If you've read this book or you've listened to the audiobook, please review it, even if it's just to say great book or terrible book or whatever it is. Every review counts. Is Stephanie here? Stephanie says, I'm so glad to follow on with the Craven Silence. So what I should tell you is this book is 170 pages. The Craven Silence 2 is 310 pages, so easily twice the length. And then the Craven Silence 3 is 280 pages. So this is the shortest book in the series. So this is the first book that I wrote with my co-author on the Jonbenet series, and I was quite intimidated at the time, but I think it was quite fortuitous that a few things happened. Quite a lot of information came out in 2016, so there's quite a lot to work with when I started writing about it. So that was good. Connie says, your ending really took me by surprise. I'd never considered what you said. Okay, so something that someone's just asked on Patreon, which I think is quite a interesting question, quite a valid question. Also a question I thought about myself was, couldn't Jonbenet have fallen either by being pushed or sort of by accident, but couldn't that head wound have been from falling, not an object on the head, not the object being smashed on the head, but through her falling? Tamika, come. Timmy's seeming to be a little bit wanting quite a lot of attention. It's strange because he went basically for 2 walks today. So the severity of that injury makes you think she could well have fallen. And one of the scenarios I considered was, well, she got a bicycle for Christmas. She's only 6 years old. It was snowing. The walkways were slippery. It was, there's some areas that are somewhat snowy or sort of frozen and icy, and others that aren't. Couldn't she have fallen off her bicycle? And there is that low wall near the front door of the Ramsey house in the front garden, like a brick wall. Couldn't she have slipped and then fallen on there? Now, the problem with the scenario where you say this injury to her skull was from a fall is a couple of things. Number one, if you look at the skull injury, it's a small triangular area that's depressed into her brain, right? And then there's a very long fracture going about, I think, 8 or 9 inches, right? And so what you've kind of got to account for, if it's a fall, is why did the skin on her scalp not break? And why is there no blood in her hair? Why you've got to account for an object either that her head hits against, or an object hitting on her head that somehow doesn't break the skin. And that is what is the tricky part of this case. So my answer to that is, although it's a scenario to consider, it's unlikely, because if you fall and bump your head against, say, a brick wall or the edge of a stair, it's likely that the sharpness that is being presented against the skull is going to break the skin, and that didn't happen. So you need another object that is going to absorb some of the energy and also is of a certain shape that is not going to break the skin, like a rounded shape, right? Connie Lukens, perhaps Jonbenet was wearing a hat since it was so cold. That's also good explanation. You could also say she was wearing a helmet. I think there are helmets. You can see the helmets in the garage. But then you've also got to account for if she'd fallen, you would imagine that there'd also be bruises on her shoulders, not scrapes necessarily, but bruises. So that would need to be sort of part of it. So Carly says, I fractured my skull when I was 7. It was only a hairline fracture, but there was no cut or blood. How did you do that, Carly? And how long was the fracture? Was it a small fracture or a large fracture? Snowline, hello everybody. I hope everyone is having a lovely weekend. Teresa Moore, greetings from Ontario. So another question that came up was on the Chris Watts case. Someone was saying, how could there be no violent activity on the ground floor? And then also saying, you seem to think that the crime happened on the ground floor. Well, there's no violent activity on the ground floor. Alyssa, I started about 8 or 10 minutes early, but really just talking about Timmy, really. Did you guys get that? So it's basically, why did the Vivian not pick up Chris Watts on the ground floor if he was on the ground floor? Now, the first thing to say is, I don't think I'm really making a scenario that the murder of Shan'ann happened like on the ground floor. I tend to think that it happened on the stairway, right? So you could either say on the ground. In fact, my first scenario was that it happened almost as she stepped onto the stairs. But it basically could be anywhere on the stairway, on the first landing or close to the loft at the top. But anyway, besides that, I do think that it's quite easy to trick security sensors. You can just put a piece of paper over them. And Chris Watts had a lot of interactions with Vivian before the time. Shanann was texting him all the time, like in about the week or two before he went to North Carolina. He was calling Vivian. I think one conversation was more than 20 minutes. So he was actually being educated on how the sensors worked. And the impression I kind of get is that perhaps he wanted to set the security system so that the dog wouldn't set off the alarm. But at the same time, he's now being educated on how to make it work for him. And I believe that he did that. And I think and I'll say this under correction, I think another simple way to sort of defeat a security sensor is you can turn off the Wi-Fi or you can turn off the power. Then I don't think it works. But just to address the question, I don't think the crime necessarily happened on the ground floor, but I do think it would make sense that he would turn off the alarm so that any movements he did would be invisible effectively. Does that make sense? Okay. Thelma and Louise, I love your podcast. You're one of the most real I've come across. Thank you. Thank you, Thelma and Louise. Thelma and Louise, are you one person or two people? Thanks very much. Some people who have felt that they can't get their questions through. So all I can say to that is I'm going to try and address your questions if you ask a question. But if you don't get through, you can always pay $1 and then I'll definitely see it because it comes across in neon color. If you really want to make sure that your question is seen, that's probably one of the ways to go. So Q says we have security, and if the power or alarm is off, the security is off as well. So it's quite simple to do that. And if you go through the phone data review and how much it deals with the Vivint, it's really quite amazing. It's quite a lot of time and effort just before he goes to North Carolina. Timmy, do you wanna? Not quite sure what's going on with Timmy. He seems like he really wants more attention, but he's really had my attention all day. Marty says, have you had nice warm weather there today? Yes, it has been warm. In fact, I feel like I'm standing in the sun right now. I feel a little bit sunburned. You can go onto my Instagram for a couple of pictures that I put up of where I was today. I put up a couple of other pictures on Twitter and also on Patreon. Julie, thank you very much. Thank you. No questions from you, Julie. Charlotte Brooks, sorry I'm late. Carly says, I wonder if poor Dieter saw what happened. I don't think so. I think he was in the basement. Elizabeth says, love your dog. Thank you. He's actually licking my hand. I really don't know what's up with him. He seems like he's in a funny, fragile mood. Camille says, I can't send a super chat for some reason. Are you logged in? Yvonne Robinson, thank you very much. Do you feel that others were involved in the murder of Shan'ann Watts and the children? There is renewed speculation, and I respect your opinion. Yvonne, I've never thought that. I don't think that now. There's a little bit of uncertainty in certain areas, and then creators then inflate that to make it like, woo, someone else was involved, and then they get a lot of views. And of course, I don't mention the person's name because it would be defamatory. Then maybe it could be another person. Then they get another huge amount of views. You need to bear in mind that law enforcement don't take it seriously at all, and it's not a conspiracy from law enforcement. Law enforcement, if they thought there was smoke, then they, as in where there's smoke, there's fire. If they thought there was smoke, they would go after it. What I don't understand with Connie says, are you doing a book about Sarah Everard? Probably not. And I'll tell you why, because I don't think there's a lot of intrigue about that case, just because it's like, we basically know what happened. But if it turns out that there is, then who knows? I just don't know if we're going to get a lot of information about that case. The other thing that I find just strange that people don't seem to see this is, let's just imagine any family. Q, thank you very much. I asked a question on Patreon. How would you all have dealt with Nutgate? Put it on Facebook or solved it privately? Is that a question to me or to everybody? Dean says, your Insta public, what is the handle? I think it's at NickVDLWEK. Okay, now I've gotten a bit distracted. So what I wanted to say, and this goes back to Yvonne Robinson's question. It's basically, let's try and just imagine another case. So let's imagine someone called Fred, and Fred wants to murder his family, right? And Fred calls you up and he says, won't you help me murder my family? I want a relationship with this lady. You're going to need some reason to be involved, right? You're going to need some reason to be involved in triple murder. You're not just going to go, oh, you want to murder your family? Oh, okay, I'm in. If the way that you might be involved is if there's shared debt, or there's a shared grievance, or there's shared a shared benefit, or there's a shared financial thing, or there's a drug scenario or something like that. But if you got no ball in the court, then it just makes no sense why someone else would be involved. And no one seems to think about that. No one seems to think, why would a third party want to murder someone else's family? You know, they don't have anything against Shan'ann or the children, so why on earth would they do that? Heavenly Clouds, hi there. In spite of, because of, what are your thoughts on the state of the Watts home? Yeah, so that is quite a good question. You know, why was her office so, messed up? I'm not quite sure whether it was Nicholas Atkinson who messed it up purposefully, or whether it just was. I don't know. It's one of the things we just don't know. I do know that Nicholas Atkinson did say that he purposefully put things where he thought, him and I think Nicole did it, to irritate Shan'ann, not to irritate her, but just to sort of play a game on her. But that definitely seems messy, doesn't it? And the crime scene technician, Dave Yoakum, the CSA, crime scene analyst, he did mention that the whole house was tidy with the exception of the office and I think the bedroom. If you look at the bedroom, there's actually a pile of pillows and clothes also almost directly opposite the bed to the right. There's also quite a lot of untidiness in the bedroom. Suzanne, okay. Jesse Dawn, NK had nothing to do with it. I agree with you. In spite of, because of the office and shoe closet were very opposite of all the rest of the home, even the basement. It's true. You could argue, if you want to see something there, you could say maybe something was hidden in the clutter. Maybe the clutter was meant to hide something. And one possibility is that there was an altercation in there, or some kind of life and death struggle. And so the clutter put over there sort of contaminates the crime scene effectively. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the office in a moment. I first want to deal with something else. Maybe I should just go straight there. Maybe we should just stick with Chris Watts. Half Rutter says, do you think Nutgate had a part in Watts' decision to kill? So I think if you take Nutgate away, or I think the one way to answer that is to say it didn't help. Nutgate didn't help the situation. It was an aggravating factor. If you took Nutgate completely away, would the crime still have happened? It's difficult to say, because Nutgate provided the scenario where you had Shan'ann saying to his family, you're never going to see the kids again, which in his mind was like, well, now if you never see the kids again, you're going to blame Shan'ann, and you're not going to think that they've died. You're going to think Shan'ann took them and disappeared. But I think in his fantasy world, he thought they would accept that, and no one would really ask questions. They would just blame Shan'ann, and it was quite an easy solution. The other bag Shan'ann had on, okay. Okay, so I think this is a question from Bria that Stephanie is repeating. Nick, you know that Friday that Chris Watts took off work and was driving Shanann's car with the girls Do you think that he drove out to the well site and possibly staged the oil leak? No. It's quite an interesting scenario, that, because I think with the Scott Peterson case, I believe that he went to the marina on, I'm not sure if it's, I think it's Christmas Eve, but anyway, he went to the marina before he was on camera going to the marina. So there is something to that theory. So, yeah, I don't think he went there just because, you could say, well, they wouldn't be able to pick up her vehicle going there, but surely his colleagues would see a vehicle going into that area on a Friday. I don't think it would be easy to go in and out like that, but it's certainly possible. I just think it's unlikely. I think he was still trying to figure out whether he would get access to the well site by Sunday night. So that's another reason. Lisa Arnold, whose primary office was it? It seems she may have thrown the built-in office and shut the door, out of sight, out of mind. I think it was primarily Shanann's office. I don't think Chris Watts really used it. She used it as her personal office. I think she also used it as, she had a shoe closet, handbags, and so on. Stephanie's asking, 12-step woman, are you interested in actually moderating in the future? I see you in other channels too, so there's a question for you. Heather West, thank you very much. No question from you, Heather. Heather Walton, hi from Dorset. Sorry, a bit late to the party. I'm going to keep, I remember Shan'ann making, let me try and make sure I don't lose this question. Alyssa Hodgkins says, by the way, Alyssa, thank you so much for your feedback from Sandwich and just your information that you've given on the Sarah Everard case. You say, I remember Shan'ann making sure the babysitter didn't access the office. Do you think that was because it was untidy? I think it was because someone had already made a mess, and I think that someone was Nicholas, just being mischievous, not being nasty, just sort of being mischievous. And I think she didn't want the babysitter having access because I think she just felt, well, I don't want another mess kind of thing. Mazoka, am I saying it right? Hi from Wirral, UK. I think someone's just, Angel, where's your Angel 5555, thank you very much. Do you think Shan'ann Watts put Shannann's keys into the car when he came home and the police were there? That's quite a good question. What was he doing going into the vehicle? What was going on there? Now, I actually quite recently listened to the Wisconsin thing, and he's asked about that, and he doesn't seem to register anything. He says, I think something like he was just looking as though he's looking for something. That was the impression that I got from him saying it. I think that it's possible that he put something in there. A lot of people think that he took something, that he could have taken her phone or her keys, but it's also possible that he put something in there. And it's also possible that he just did nothing. It's possible that he opened the door as a distraction, as a delay tactic, so that Nicole would have to go around the door and he'd have a couple of extra seconds to go into the house. It's possible that he put the keys into the car it would have looked a little bit suspicious if he had her keys, I think, on that day. I definitely agree with that. It would also be strange if he had her phone. So maybe he left her phone in her car when he committed the crime. And so he retrieved her phone, perhaps to hide it away. At that point, it's difficult to say. My dog's actually sleeping here. You can't actually see him, but he's actually sleeping across my chest, which is a first. I don't know whether he caught sunstroke. I'm just trying to see if I've missed any other questions. Victoria Epperson, why Chris said he got involved with bad people, not a person. He got involved with bad people. I don't really want to speculate about that because that can really mean anything. I'd rather not speculate. And I think it's a bit of a strange thing for him to say, who is the worst person in the story by far? Who killed his pregnant wife and his children, and then lied about it, and now it seems like he's back to blaming Shan'ann. I'm not quite sure, or is he blaming Shannann's friend? I don't know how you can think about anyone else that comes close to being a bad person next to him. And that does bring up a topic that I want to talk about. I want to talk about toxic masculinity. Do you think this is a case of toxic masculinity? Do you think that Chris Watts' case is toxic masculinity? I touched on toxic positivity in the previous video, and for me it's astonishing that after going on to 3 years, no one has touched on that aspect. I think because it sort of wades into the area of what someone would automatically say is victim blaming. So if you criticize the MLM thing, now you're blaming Shan'ann and you're saying she's responsible for her death. No, it's not that. You're just saying being positive about everything, did that help in the situation? If Shan'ann had been a bit more circumspect, there were quite a few people around us saying, I think Chris is having an affair. One of them was Cassie. Another one, I think, was Christina. Another one, I think, was Eddie. And they were sort of, all of these symptoms point to an affair. And Shan'ann just was remaining positive. And was that helpful? So someone says, what is toxic masculinity? It's basically, if you imagine, probably the best is just to Google it, but if you imagine a man who just wants to have everything his way, almost like a man's world, but basically a guy who goes to gym, who sees other women as sex objects, who is a chauvinist, and, who, I guess sees other women as kind of a means to an end, that women are just playthings or something like that, right? And I think if we are talking about that, then I think we should just address it quickly. I think you could make the case that Chris Watts was suffering from toxic masculinity, which is he was so caught up in desire. He was bear in mind, he was working out. He was aware of his own vanity. He was doing all that kind of thing. And then in that state of mind, he thought, you know what, it's a good idea, or given how I'm feeling, I'm going to get rid of my family. And I think that in its own little nutshell is toxic masculinity. Just that. I'm not saying, I really don't think Chris Watts is an example of toxic masculinity. But what he did, the thing where he's looking good, he finds the attractive alternative and he disposes, that is toxic. But I think it's misleading to say that the Watts case is an example of toxic masculinity. I think you could say the same thing about Jodi Arias. You could say Jodi Arias, killing Travis Alexander was an example of toxic femininity. I just don't think that those labels are of any use, because you needed to go further than the crime. So, for example, and I think in Jodi Arias' case it does sort of work, because there's talk of her being a stalker, and everybody believed that she was involved in the crime, whereas with Chris Watts, in the beginning, no one thought that he was capable of it. I'm just saying, for toxic masculinity to be prevalent, you need that kind of arrogance, you need that kind of disposable, careless attitude to the opposite sex, kind of ongoing basis, and I don't think that was happening. I actually want to just Google it, just so that I've got a proper definition here. But my dog is going to wake up now. Timmy? Toxic masculinity. It refers to a traditional cultural masculine norms that can be harmful to men, women, and society overall. It's not very helpful. It's used to describe how certain masculine traits cause harm to men themselves and are also harmful to women. I think like an example of that is a guy who's on steroids and who thinks that everything is, about him and about the importance of his appearance, kind of thing. I just want to go a bit further. Toxic masculinity can also assume all men are straight and suggest this is the way they should be. So it's just basically kind of male chauvinism on steroids, basically. And I don't really get that sense from Chris Watts. I don't know about you guys. Timmy's needy today and I love it. Okay. Phoebe Beach, I hate the need for labels. Me too. Beverly Lawyer says, the killer beside you or in your house. Trust me, I've been there. That's pretty shocking. Mazoka says, I love the way Nick says here. Okay. Niole, I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. Noel Cacho. Do you think Chris will get a 35C? No. Don't think he has a hope. Eleanor Ryan, Jodi was saying, how dare you move on with your life? You're mine and no one else's. Absolutely. Mary Rose, toxic patriarchy in that he thought of wife plus children as a unit controlled and owned by him. I'm not sure if I agree, Mary Rose. I think he felt controlled. I don't think he was ever controlling until the end, where he took control of the situation. Dean, people really struggle to believe Chris did this for love, don't they? There seem to be. Not all men are violent or murderers, but they sure get the attention. Okay. Alyssa Hodgkin says, I kind of wish he would get the 35C because I would love to have a court case. I agree with you, and I think there are a lot of creators out there that would also love a court case to the extent that they even want to help Chris Watts. I just don't think it's legally realistic. Online orders. Have you seen the body cam footage with the police in front of Chris Watts while at the driveway on the Monday afternoon? He was describing Shannan's arrival and then he said, got back in the basement. It's difficult to comment on that without actually seeing the clip and playing it. Okay, so we're past half an hour. I've got time for just a few more questions. By the way, if you are watching and you haven't subscribed, please do. I'd really like to get to 33,700. I know we're about 20 something away from there. So if you're watching and you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. Tammy's actually licking my hand here. I don't know why it's so needy tonight. Watts did lots of passive aggressive things to Shan'ann. So let me ask you a question. Do you think Chris Watts, and I want to take this away from the crime, which is maybe a bit unfair or unreasonable, but if you take the lifetime of their marriage, who do you think was more passive aggressive, Shan'ann or Chris Watts? And to open kind of a can of worms, would you say that Nutgate was passive aggressive, just meaning Shan'ann got very upset about Nutgate, and then in the letter she said, okay, I'll be civil to them, I will say I'm sorry. But after saying, I want you to cut them out of your life, wouldn't you say that qualifies as passive aggressive? Simple's meerkat. Maybe Tim is feeling a little bit poorly and he's... Well, not really, because he was with me the whole day. He went with me to... on quite a long drive where I took photos of the triathlon. So, and I didn't really work today. I didn't really make a video. So it's strange. The impression I get is that Shan'ann was quite aggressive. I don't know if aggressive is the right word. Shan'ann was quite dominating, and Chris was quite passive. So you can say that she was aggressive, he was passive, but you could use another word and say she was controlling, she was dominant, and he was passive. And in the beginning it worked, but later on it didn't work. Elizabeth Jones says something is unsettling Timmy. I'm not quite sure what it is. He's definitely in a funny place today. Having an affair is passive, is it? Isn't having an affair I won't say an aggressive move, but it's an assertive move, right? Okay, so are you guys ready for me to go into Nicole Atkinson and The Office? I think we should do that before we deal with the Ramseys. Are there any more questions? Usually there's a leader in relationships. It's not always good or bad. I think it is good to have leadership in a relationship. I think you've got to decide what... You can't argue all the time. Someone's got to decide what needs to happen. Although there does need to be give and take. Lisa Arnold, I think he resented her for the way she treated him and handled the finances. True, although I think she also resented him for not being more available to her in ways that she needed him. But yeah, I think in a way you can blame both of them. You can blame him for not standing up for himself earlier. But having said that, I don't know if you've ever been in a relationship where when you stand up for yourself, there's like a nuclear holocaust. So, and then you just feel like it's just not worth it. And you get some people who rule by kind of emotional blackmail and by drama. And so then you kind of learn try and just avoid it. You kind of already thinking, well, I want to leave this relationship, but you've already found, well, when I try and discuss it in a proper way, no one listens. And he did mention that. He did say, just in a general way that they didn't feel listened to. And when that's the case, it's difficult to say, wow, this is my position. Hugs for Timmy from Scotland. Many men shut down to avoid the bombing. Maybe Timmy likes your voice. I don't know if that's true. Sometimes I'll be narrating an audiobook and then he will go and lie in another room, but could be because the aircon's too cold or something. So just for those who've come in late, the next audiobook that I'm going to be doing on Patreon will be The Craven Silence 2. It's 310 pages, so it's by far the longest book in the trilogy, and that's certainly going to be keeping me busy for quite a while. Yeah, walking on eggshells. Chris McManus. Chris was so non-confrontational. I think he was using Shan'ann. So something that I think is important to mention is the people who think that he did go to bed and that he was waiting for Shan'ann in bed. If that's the case, think about what Shan'ann expected that morning. First of all, she'd given him that book, Hold Me Tight, and also she'd written him a love letter and she was expecting a response to the love letter. Now, bear in mind, initially, Shan'ann was supposed to be home at 11 o'clock at night. So he was expecting Shan'ann home close to 11 o'clock or midnight. Had Shan'ann arrived home at that time, she wouldn't just have gotten into bed. There would have been time enough to have a conversation, and specifically about, well, have you read the book? Have you answered my note, right? And so up until that point, Anne Chapman, thank you very much. Up until that point, so what I mean is, when Chris Watts got off the phone with Kissinger, he was assuming that, and that's why he got off the phone, he was assuming that Shan'ann was about to arrive, right? He got so caught up in that phone call that it was almost like, okay, Shanann's going to be here in 10 or 20 minutes. And so he didn't throw away that book in the trash the next morning, sorry. I wonder if Timmy's not worried about me. I wonder if Timmy's not sort of sensing something from me. Anyway, and so he'd made up his mind, he'd premeditated everything, so it doesn't make any sense to me that if he'd not written the letter, he'd thrown the book away, that he's now going to put himself in bed for Shan'ann for one final performance. I just don't see that happening. When he threw the book in the trash, then he was done. Does that make sense? When he got that letter, and I think when he got the letter and Shan'ann said, I'm never going to give up on us, it had the opposite effect to what she wanted, which was he decided there's no reasoning here, I'm going to have to take control. SC, thank you very much. Have you changed your name? I like that thing doing the barbells. I definitely need to do more of that. Animals know and can sense things. Thanks, Stephanie. 12-step woman, I will definitely add you as a moderator, okay? Just remind me. So I'm going to go into Nicole Atkinson. And a lot of people don't know this because when we deal with a discovery, people think the discovery is just those 1,960 pages, but there's actually discovery beyond that. There's a little bit of discovery dealing with what Nicole Kessinger said, and then there's 72 pages of discovery from Nicole Atkinson that's not part of the original discovery. There's also the 32 pages of discovery that came out from Wisconsin in February 2019. But the discussion Nicole Atkinson had with Agent Zentner, I think she was in Boulder, working in Boulder, and I think it was a call center or something like that. But anyway, she was working, and he came to her there on Tuesday night, around about the same time that, was it Tuesday night or was it Monday night? Can't quite remember. Does anyone know? Can't quite remember if it was it Monday night? Maybe on Tuesday night. Anyway, I can't quite remember on that score, but she spoke to Agent Zentner. I actually did a 15-part set. Whoa, what is that? Felt like something was crawling up on me, but it was just Timmy. Sorry about that. That really felt weird. Felt like a mouse or something was running on me, but it must have been his paw. I did a series on Patreon, the Atkinson transcripts, just dealing with the 72 pages in detail. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read you a section from there dealing with the suitcase. So we at line 426, and then Nicole is saying something about what Shan'ann was wearing when she came back from Arizona, what she was wearing, what she was carrying. So she says, so he repeats, with a bag, suitcase. Then she says, Nicole Atkinson says, she had a carry-on suitcase and her purse. Zentner says, okay, you remember what color her carry-on was? And Nicole responds, it was black. It's in the house, sitting right by the stairs. That's obviously a reference to the suitcase. Now, I'm not quite sure at what point I found out that the suitcase that she took to Arizona wasn't that lurid pink suitcase. But in my first narrative, I actually assumed, based on her Facebook and based on the photo of them going to Arizona, you know, the photo of the children and Chris Watts and Shan'ann and the bags, I thought, well, that is their luggage, but it ended up being the black bag, right? I mean, I wanted to be accurate in my description of the suitcase when I reimagined the crime in the first book. Anyway, so she says it was black and it was sitting by the stairs. Then Zentner says, is it? Okay, I haven't been in there. Nicole says, mm-hmm. So Zentner then says, carry on. And then she says, it was sitting there. And then she says, then he asks, oh, was it like your regular carry-on? And then she answers, yeah, I think it's like, it's black and has some patent leather on it, right? Now we're on page 11 of that 72-page transcript. Then Zentner says, okay. And then she says, it was sitting in there. All could have been in the house the last 2 days. It was sitting right by the stairs. So she's now still talking about the suitcase. When we went in yesterday, okay, so obviously that was Monday, and so this interview with Zentner was Tuesday night. So then Zentner says, okay, so you pick her up at 4:30 at her house. She's got the carry-on and her purse. This is Friday morning. So she had a really, really early start Friday morning. And bear in mind, she actually said that she felt ill then. Do you remember that? She texted Chris to say, I can barely stand, I feel dizzy. And then he said, didn't he say you must be tired or maybe you need to rest or something like that? I can't quite remember. And then she said, then she says, mm-hmm. And Zentner says, what kind of purse did she have? And this is where the discussion deals with the handbag. When he says purse, he kind of means handbag. And then she says, it was a Dolce & Gabbana, like beige color. It's in the, so that's what she says. It was a Dolce & Gabbana, like beige color. It's in the, and then he interrupts her and says beige. She says house, too. So that the handbag was in the house as well. Then he says, okay. Then she says, this is quite key. She says, Nicole Atkinson says, I found it in the office when we went through the house. So Nicole Atkinson is the one who found the handbag. And where did she find it? In the office, right? Zentner then says, so it was in the office. She answers, yeah, it was in her office. Then, and this is the critical thing, she says, like right inside the door. I don't know how I walked past it as many times as I did, because we went in. I was concerned about Shan'ann. So what she's saying there is she doesn't understand how she walked by the handbag many times, and then suddenly it was there. So what she's saying is it was right inside the door, and the impression I get is, and you can see it from the cover image of this video, that the door opens to the right and there's chairs there and the handbags on that chair. I kind of get the impression it was on the left, but you need Nicole Atkinson to confirm this. But anyway, she says right inside the door. So I kind of get the impression it was just put behind the wall, if you open the door, just down on the floor over there. And what she's saying here is, I don't know how I didn't see the handbag there, because she says, I walked past it as many times as I did. And I think what that suggests is the handbag was placed there, the handbag was moved there. Maybe not. It may be just that she was kind of in a tiz, she was kind of scatterbrained or worried, and she just didn't notice it. But I don't think so, because I think when you're looking for something, when you're looking for signs of Shan'ann, she noticed her shoes, she noticed her suitcase, and then, where's her purse? But then she doesn't notice her purse, but she's looking for things to notice of Shan'ann. So the impression I get is that that the purse wasn't there in the beginning, and that somebody put it there. And it's not rocket science. I mean, all I'm saying is the impression I get is that the handbag was placed there while people were in the crime scene. So while Coonrod was there, I don't know whether there were other people there, but possibly Chris Watts moved Shanann's handbag to the office. And then if that's true, then you've got to say, well, where was it? That could have been quite inculpatory. In other words, it would have looked bad. In other words, like, why is Shanann's handbag in your truck? Now, I don't think it was in her truck. Why is Shanann's handbag in the basement? And I think it's possible that it was in the basement. If it was in the bedroom, there would not necessarily be any reason to move it. It could also be that Chris Watts hid her handbag away in a sense of, well, she's not here. In other words, you hide her handbag away to suggest that she's left. But then wherever he hid it away, maybe wasn't a very good hiding place, right? Deborah Booth, thank you very much. Enjoying the lives. Well, that's good to hear. So what do you guys think about that? Do you think it's quite an interesting scenario there? Living Life in Hawaii says, the first thing a female thinks of is a purse or a handbag, never leaves a woman. It's almost as important as the cell phone. Do you guys agree? Nicole Boutelier, hello Nick from Cape Breton, just popping in on to say hi to Timmy. I don't know if my voice is going to last a lot longer. The air seems to be very dry today. Nicole, I think it was moved, but I'm not sure why. I think he was rearranging things anyway before he let them all in. Well, Nicole, I think the answer is you would move something from position A to position B if the position A is going to reflect badly on you. Right? So let's just take the phone. why would you move the phone from wherever it was to the under the couch? And I think the answer is, well, he didn't want people to read what was on her phone. Bear in mind, his messages are sort of hidden away and deleted, but hers aren't necessarily. And maybe he's still meant to get to hers. Maybe he's still meant to selectively remove her messages. So in other words, why would you move certain things? Well, to create an impression that is going to be more favorable to him. Someone said, was Shannan's Apple Watch ever found? I think it was. Chrissy Lee, I don't know, I asked. I will ask her myself. I'm not quite sure what that's about, Chrissy. So something that I've just written in my notes here is that I don't think Chris Watts would have, and this is really the bottom line, I don't think Chris Watts would have moved the handbag. Now, this is assuming that he did. So in other words, when Nicole says, I don't know how I walked past it, meaning the handbag, as many times as I did without seeing it, what that suggests is the handbag wasn't there and then it was there. So now if we assume that's true, and it might not be, but if we assume it's true, why would Chris Watts put the handbag in the office if that is where the crime happened? And that is why I say I don't think it happened in the office. I do think there's quite a strong argument to make if Shan'ann would go to the office first thing, like if she came home from a trip or from an errand, and the first thing she did was she always went to her office and put her handbag there. If this was like a routine for her and something you could expect, then I think there's a fairly strong case that is where the crime, not necessarily in the office, although possibly, but maybe just outside the office. Bear in mind, the cadaver dog scented something at the top of the basement stairs, which is exactly where we're talking about. So it's possible something did happen there. Okay. I think there's more to say around that, but I don't want to sort of cover territory I've covered before. Living Life in Hawaii says Shan'ann had to pee first, she was pregnant. So but the other thing is, Living Life in Hawaii, is that there's a bathroom right next to her office. So where do you think it was likelier that she would go? Up the stairs to her bedroom or to her office, right? And I think you've got to look at that video of her arriving home, carrying the suitcase and carrying the handbag, and say, and it's 2:00 in the morning, and say, what would she likely do? Bear in mind, she probably also wants to look in on the children. Would she go straight upstairs? Would she go into her bedroom first? Would she go into the kids' bedrooms first? What would she do? Half Ratter says, Watts was not expecting the cops so soon. He likely had to quickly hide things. I think he definitely hid the phone. I wouldn't be surprised if he cleared the bed very, very quickly as well, and basically threw bed sheets into opposite corners. And the reason he would want to do that is that you wouldn't see at face value that some of the bedding is missing. So if you just imagine that he didn't do that, or if you imagine that the bed looked like everything like a normal bed, but the problem is that the fitted sheet is missing, you would go, well, why is the fitted sheet missing? And obviously he can't account for that because of where it actually is, right? So just one thing, I've drawn a little graphic here. I don't know if you guys can, if I should show it to you. Can you see over there? Anyway, the graphic is, you have the office here, you have the kitchen over here, you have the bedroom over here, and you have the basement over here. And what is sort of connecting all of those places? So remember, in the kitchen you had the sheets or the pillowcases that had that residue on it. So that's part of the crime scene. Then you had the office, which has got the handbag in it. Then you've got the bed, which is where he said the crime happened. And then you've got the basement. And what connects all of these to each other? The stairs. And what just stood out to me in the warrantless arrest affidavit was that he actually placed himself on the stairs. So he would say, she was in the bedroom, right? I then went downstairs, then I heard something on the stairs, and I turned around and I went back to the bedroom. And that is what I think happened, is Shan'ann, that sound that he heard on the stairs is, I think, the sound that he made while him and Shan'ann were on the stairs. Jimmy is Timmy with a new haircut. Yeah, someone came up to me today and just spoke for quite a long time, just saying that he looks so different and he actually looks less friendly than he did look, which I agree. Timmy's got he looks like I don't know, he looks like a very sweet little doggy when he's got his full head of hair, and he's got a seriousness and a severity, kind of an intent that he doesn't have otherwise. Something I must tell you that is kind of quite funny is, I haven't had him fixed, and I think yesterday some friends of mine brought their dogs to the field, and the dog was on heat. A Rottweiler was on heat, and this Rottweiler Timmy is really in love with. And now the table seems to have turned. The Rottweiler seems to really like Timmy. And the weird thing is that Timmy didn't seem to know that this dog was on heat, which beggars belief. Annie Thomas, thank you very much. I love all your Chris Watts books. Thanks very much. I think I said the other day on Patreon that the highest reviewed book of the Two-Face series is Annihilation. And the highest reviewed book of all of the books, I think, is Silver Fox, The Third Confession. Maria de la Maza, hello from California. Bria Lace, if Shan'ann was attacked on the stairs and had to pee, wouldn't pee have been all over the stairs? That's a good point. What I think a lot of people get confused with is Shan'ann did evacuate, and that, I believe, is what he picked up using the pillowcase. So actually excrement. And I think when he uses the word evacuate in that thing in the confession from Wisconsin, I think people assume that refers to urine. I don't think it necessarily doesn't mean that, but urine is something that you can to some extent clean and it's going to disappear, but excrement can leave odor and stains to the extent that urine won't. Yeah, so when he said relieved herself, I don't think he was using the right term there. I think the agent said something about evacuated or something like that, but they used kind of this strange language. But anyway, the way I understand that when I looked at that was that she that there was excrement deposited there. By the way, you had the same thing happening with Jonbenet Ramsey. Her long johns were covered in urine, and there was no excrement because there was very little food in her digestive tract, which in a way tells you that the crime happened late at night because she went to dinner at the Whites. That food had to have come out, right? Which I think is definitely quite interesting. Firefly says she could have done both. Yeah. Jinxie Jinx says usually you will lose your bodily fluids when death occurs. I think I actually asked an expert about this, and I think what he said to me was, no, it doesn't usually happen. I think it depends on, I do know that certainly when there's asphyxia involved, that it tends to happen. Something that I didn't know was that a coffin birth, for example, is rare. To deliver a baby or for the baby to emerge isn't common. So that I've got an idea. The reason why it happened could be because she was buried not on her back but on her stomach. It could also be because she was transported on her stomach, and it could also be because she was possibly attacked from behind, and so there was pressure on her stomach at the time of her death. But that's my opinion. I'm not a doctor, but that's what makes sense to me. Alyssa Hodgkin says the coffin birth was caused by the natural gases pushing the baby out. Yes, natural gases, just some of those bodily functions that are staggered, that are basically stopped, but are nevertheless coming to a standstill. But nevertheless, what's happening? Coffin birth has to do with decomposition. You can actually look it up on Wikipedia. There's quite a straightforward article on it, coffin birth, how often it happens, how it happens, and all that kind of thing. Probably helped by the position she was buried in too. So I've got a question for you guys. Do you think Chris Watts fell asleep after the call with Kessinger? So the question is, he speaks to her for 111 minutes, and then at about 20 past 11 realizes she's not going to be home for another 2 hours. Do you think he slept? What do you think he did in those 2 hours? Do you think that he would have just gone to sleep in her bed and then sort of just knows he's planning to commit a murder? Do you think he's going to just sleep and sort of pick things up when he wakes up? So everyone here is saying no. I agree with that, because I think committing murder is a bit like doing a triathlon. You prepare for it. I'm not going to say you train for it, but you certainly prepare yourself mentally, and you've got to have everything kind of lined up. And I don't think you sleep till the last moment when there's a triathlon. I think you know what I mean. And I think murder is the same way. And this wasn't just the murder of one person. If you think about the throwing away of the book ahead of the time, if you think about it in another way, what if he didn't kill Shan'ann and then she would say, well, what did you do with Hold Me Tight? Oh, well, I threw it into the trash. Did you write back the letter? No. The love letter. Did you answer the love letter? No. Well, what about that receipt that I got that you were at the Lazy Dog restaurant. If they'd had a conversation, this is what so many people miss. If they'd had a conversation, foremost in Shannan's mind would have been, I wrote you a love letter. What did you think? What is the answer? And that would be the first thing she would ask. And Chris Watts has been assuming all along, rightly, that we would just not know about that letter. That letter was given to him and she was expecting an answer. She thought so much about the letter that she took a screen grab of it and sent it to Sarah Nudd, and she wrote a first draft and a second draft. That letter was designed to save her marriage. That letter was designed to, in a way, save her life, and in a way, I think, cost her life. Stephanie says Shan'ann would have been irate if the book was in the garbage and no note. She was expecting it, and he was expecting that she was going to want to know about that, and so he didn't want to have that conversation, right? Kat Jersey Shaw says that letter meant a lot to her. It was a 2-page letter, and there was quite a lot of big stuff in that letter. Included in that letter was Shan'ann undertaking to, I think, apologize to Cindy, or to undertaking to be civil to Cindy, which I think was a big asking a lot from Shan'ann. But to her credit, that was what she was going to do. I can hear crickets. Yes, there are crickets in the background. Imagine writing a love letter and demanding a response. The book was another self-help-like book for marriage, tying into your last video. So let me just address that. I'd like to think that I know almost everything in the Chris Watts case. In terms of the books, Nicole Atkinson said that Shan'ann ordered a book for Chris Watts and that she was also reading it. Now, in all honesty, I don't know whether she was reading an ebook. Some people suggested that. If that's true, I don't know how they know that. What is a good argument is that we've all seen the one book, but I don't think we've seen the other book. So I think it does make sense that there was an ebook, but not necessarily. There could have been another one. One thing in the discovery is it refers to, I don't know if there's an error in the discovery, but it refers to Hold Me Tight twice on 2 different occasions, but they both listed as item number 11, and that tells me it's the same book. It's just recorded twice, but it could be an error. I just think it was interesting that she was reading that book when she was in Arizona, and she sent the book to him. And I also found it interesting what Nicole Atkinson was reading. If you're thinking about what is going on in someone's mind, then one thing that is helpful to look at is what movies were they watching close to the time that the crime happened, and also what books were they reading. Another good idea of what is going on in someone's mind is what music were they listening to. And in one of my books, I think I spoke about Chris Watts listening to heavy metal and what kind of people listen to heavy metal. And I think that is definitely an interesting kind of conversation. I had an assistant not that long ago who's very sweet and very kind of quiet and very understated, but then her music is, you can't reconcile the music to this person. It's like, it's just very aggressive and hard and I don't know, it's just very, what do they call it? Death metal. You have like this death metal, and then you have this person who is very sort of church-like and saintly and just very kind of sweet, and yet they've got this other side to themselves. And in a way, you have the same thing with Chris Watts. He seems very sweet and kind, but then The Metallica, I think, shows another side to the real Chris Watts, doesn't it? Phoebe Beach, rage-inducing. Someone talks about toxic masculinity had taken over. Debbie McClellan, Dawn, I forgot the US changed their time and we in the UK haven't yet. Leslie Dunbar, no surprise Shanann Watts was demanding. Chris Watts was a cold fish for 6 weeks. Thrash metal, that's it. So can we move on to Jonbenet Ramsey? Can we talk about that a little bit? There's quite a few interesting things to talk about there. Connie Lukens, I don't imagine that Watts was much of an avid reader. That's an interesting point, Connie, because you remember he gave that speech about relationships, and in that speech he actually quoted a book, and I actually researched that book a little bit just to see what he was talking about, and I found that quite interesting. So, something else is that when they visited Chris Watts in Wisconsin, he told them that he was reading a paperback, and then I think they asked him where he got hold of it, and I still remember when they were going into that area of conversation thinking, wow, I wonder if Chris Watts doesn't have one of my books, and if this is going to come through in the interrogation, that's going to be, it was just a little moment of being overly imaginative, but I thought, what if he's actually got one of my books with him and I'm going to get some free publicity? But then it just turned out that it was some other book. So, Alyssa Hodgkins, Nick, do you think anyone will ever be charged for Jonbenet Ramsey's murder? Okay, that's quite a good question. No, I don't think anyone will ever be charged, which brings me to a question I want to ask you guys. Do you think the Jonbenet Ramsey investigation is officially open but unofficially closed? Chef Betsy, thanks so much. Thank you, Nick, for helping me shake the dust off my critical thinking skills. My husband and I are almost at the finish line, soon to be empty nesters. Okay. I was wondering what you meant by finish line, but I think I know what you mean. Well, good luck. Some friends of mine are quite close to that as well. So Mystery Baker says unofficially closed. I agree with it. I think the Jonbenet Ramsey investigation is unofficially closed. So you might say, well, if it's unofficially closed, why can't you say it's closed? And I think the reason is, bear in mind, and there are a couple of scenarios here. The one scenario is that it could be some intruder that they just can't find, and maybe they've just given up looking for them. Or maybe they just, almost like the Madeleine McCann case, nothing is going anywhere, right? But the other scenario, and this is in the Jonbenet Ramsey case, what if you have a scenario of a minor possibly being involved? And if a minor is possibly involved, it basically means that the law doesn't recognize it, right? This was brought up in the CBS documentary, just that if someone is below a certain age, the law simply doesn't recognize that a crime has happened. And so you can't investigate a crime where the law itself doesn't recognize it as a crime. But now this is the important part to bear in mind. If you say that, so if Boulder police say something like, well, we can't prosecute this case because a minor is involved or could be involved, then what that is communicating is something that is going to violate the privacy of that individual, if that is the case. So they can't kind of be honest. So it's almost like the law is sort of switching back on itself. So the law is meant to protect someone, right? But in this case, you don't have the prosecution, and so the law kind of inverts itself, and so you've got to say the investigation is ongoing, except it can't be going on if that is the case. Do you see what I'm talking about? And of course, the other issues, the statute of limitation has expired on them, so do you see what we're talking about? Stephanie says, I think the Cold Case Foundation are investigating it, but are going down the wrong line of thinking. Paula Edwards, Met Office have just asked for more funding for the Maddie case. That's true. I actually just got a comment which I don't think is true, so please, when I say this, I'm saying it at the same time saying I don't think it's true. I got a comment on YouTube a couple of hours ago with someone saying, I think the European Court of Human Rights have ruled in the McCann case. And this, of course, would be massive news, right? And so I then contacted someone that is a bit of an insider, and this person said that, I don't want to reveal if it's a he or a she, that there was no information on that. And then I Googled to see if there was any information, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing within the last month. So I don't think that rumor is true. DN, thank you very much. Have you watched Allen versus Farrow on HBO? Would love to know your thoughts. I'm sorry I can't respond. I haven't seen it, so I'm sorry I can't say anything about it. I just haven't seen it. I did watch something on Netflix earlier today, something like Illicit Desires or Forbidden Desires or something, and it's about an author, a woman, who hires a babysitter, and I think the babysitter is played by Kelsey Grammer's daughter, who's stunning, and then all sorts of intriguing things that happen there. I did watch that. But I've got to say, I was far more watching Greer Grammer, I think that's her name, just because she's so beautiful. I was just like watching her, and I'm not sure if she's been in too many roles, but I hope that we're going to see more of her. Alyssa Hodgkins, I watched that last night. Are you talking about what I'm talking about? If so, can you remember the name of it? It's something about 12-Step Women. I didn't know that existed on Netflix. Thanks for letting us know. Is it on Netflix? The Staircase. The Staircase is definitely worth getting into. It's something I really do want to get into. I've got to tell you that when I narrate an audiobook, it sucks up a lot of my time. The next book I want to do, The Craven Silence 2, is going to be taking away the next 20 mornings at least of my future. And so it's difficult for me to have the energy and the time to focus on certain other things. It really takes up a lot of time. But there is just a lot of interest in the Jonbenet Ramsey case on Patreon right now. I was quite surprised. I thought most people would want something on Chris Watts, and there were significantly more votes for another book on Jonbenet. It sort of suits me because once you get that ball rolling, you need it to, once you sort of have all those balls juggling in your mind, it's easier to deal with them. So one thing that came up in the Craven Silence that I want to talk about that I think is quite interesting, and Jay, thanks very much, is, and I've actually got to credit someone on Web Sleuths for noticing this because it's really quite amazing. there was a A&E documentary that came out. I think it's called something like Jonbenet Ramsey, The Killer Speaks, or can't quite remember, but it was an A&E documentary that came out in September 2016. I wonder if I can find it in here. It refers to an A&E documentary, but it doesn't refer to. In any event, what is quite amazing is they play this little clip of Burke talking, and I think this was in a way to attract the attention before that CBS documentary. So in other words, you see Burke as a little boy talking before the CBS documentary. And what was quite interesting in it was he says something like, Dan Schuller says to him, you know, were you worried about something? You know, and you actually see Burke sort of looking at him. He's sort of crouched in a sort of fetal position, and he's sort of looking at Schuller, and then Schuller asks him another question, and then he actually looks down and away. And then he says something like, I was worried that they would find her, right? And the subtitles for that particular moment are shown that he's saying, I was worried that they wouldn't find her, right? Now, you can imagine in a scenario where someone is kidnapped that you would worry that they wouldn't find that person. That is a genuine concern that you would have. I'm worried that they're not going to be able to find her. I'm worried that she's lost, right? But you wouldn't say that I'm worried that they would find her. And that is, when you listen to it, you can listen to it a couple of times. You can decide for yourself, does it sound like you're saying, I was worried that they would find her or wouldn't? Now, as I say, the subtitles for that segment show wouldn't find her. But as I say, the person Webster's heard would, and it's really interesting. Anyway, that was really an interesting point that I think came up. The other thing that I want to bring up here that I don't think too many people are aware of. Now, bear in mind, the narrative is called The Craven Silence, and it's broken into sections: Craven, Silence, and then I think Broken Silence. And then one of the things that I try and draw your attention to is, first of all, Melody Stanton hearing a scream, right? But the thing that I think so many people have forgotten or perhaps don't know is that her husband also heard something. Does anyone here know what that was? So Melody Stanton heard a scream. She was specific to say that it was a child screaming, and that the scream lasted something like 3 seconds and then was abruptly cut off. So she heard it with quite a lot of detail, and she still kind of stayed awake for something like 10 minutes listening. You know, she assumed that the parents would sort it out or, you know, would be on hand, but she sort of stayed awake listening, and then she fell asleep again. But then her husband heard something. Stephanie, you're right. She heard the sound of, and I hope I'm being accurate now, I think he said that he heard the sound of metal on concrete. That was the sound that he thought he heard, right? Now, there are a couple of possibilities for that. It could be the grate. So if you disbelieve the intruder theory, well, here's possible reinforcement for it, that at this point, shortly after Jonbenet had screamed, the intruder is now leaving the scene, and what he does is he drops the grate, and the grate makes this clanking sound, right? Johnny Nobody says bicycle. I think that's a great possibility, and that's one that I also considered, is that either you could have had a scenario where Jonbenet was actually outside riding a bicycle and she fell. But the problem with that is she's now fallen after the screen. So is it likely to be that? Stephanie says, could be, since there were bicycle tracks. You can actually see in some of the photos of the lawn, you can see long lines that do look like bicycle tracks in the snow. And somebody actually mentioned that as well, mentioned what they thought, that they were seeing bicycle tracks in the snow. And the neighbor, Joe Barniel, actually saw Burke Ramsey riding his bicycle. This is not a bicycle he got at Christmas. This was an old bicycle. But you get the feeling that kids were riding their bicycles on Christmas Day. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Sherry Burnett says the bat. And I think that is likely. I think if you look at the crime scene photos, you actually see two bats that are lying on concrete. One of them is kind of a black bat, and the other one, and I think that bat is the one that made that noise. But there's also another bat that's sort of a bluish color, sort of like a light blue color, blue, slightly green color, almost like this color. And that bat sort of underneath like a pipe or something. I think it could be a hose pipe. I don't think it was that bat, just because I don't think that would make a very loud noise. I'm not quite sure what that bat was made out of. But if you just imagine a softball bat, but a bat made of aluminum, landing on concrete, wouldn't that make a loud clanking noise that you could hear from some distance? Chef Betsy, Nick, have you put out any material, book or video on the West Memphis 3? Yes, I have. I've written a book called King of Freaks. And I must say, that's definitely a series I am itching to continue with. I really want to write the next book in that series. There are a couple of books that I was writing a series on, and as I was writing, something else came along, and then I got caught up in that. So a couple of examples. I was writing the third book in the Treachery series on Casey Anthony when the Chris Watts case happened. So I'm actually halfway through a book on Casey Anthony that it's just hanging there waiting to be finished. I'm wanting to write the fourth book on Scott Peterson called Way to the World, but other things, actually, I don't think anything interrupted that. I just think people weren't really reading it enough, and there weren't enough reviews, and that has since picked up. So I do want to write another book on Scott Peterson. I'm kind of waiting for the trial to happen. And I must say, I'm watching the Scott Peterson case with disbelief. It's pretty incredible what's happening there. I think Scott Peterson is an example of what Chris Watts could have gotten away with had he stuck to his guns, had he had any kind of faith in his own game. Just shows you what can happen. Stephanie says, how King of Freaks, Mountain Mania series. Johnny Nobody said, I read the prosecutor's book back in 2004. Do you mean of the Scott Peterson case? Which prosecutor? Bonnie May says, why did the Ramseys put Jonbenet's death as the 25th of the 12th on her headstone? Well, I think Steve Thomas and others have speculated that was deliberate. Could be. I'm not quite sure what else they were supposed to do. Were they supposed to make it 25/26? On the other hand, if they'd said 26, they'd also be in trouble, because you'd say, well, how do you know it was that day? So, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Something that I think is definitely worth pointing out is the ransom note talks about a foreign faction. It talks about someone who respects John's business, and there's been profilers who've told John Ramsey, and John Ramsey will talk on Oprah and on Dr. Oz and on other shows and say, I think that, I was told that someone's very angry with me, and this is a personal thing against me. And yet, if you think about it, the people that they say are their most likely suspects have got nothing to do with the ransom note, and don't seem to have any problem with John Ramsey. I'm talking about their prime suspects, like Michael Helgoth. What problem does he have with John Ramsey? They're from completely different walks of life. And is Michael Helgoth from a foreign faction? Then there's Santa Claus. I mean, for goodness sake, he was in the Ramsey house. What possible problem would he have with the Ramseys when he was even invited to the funeral? And so on and so on. So you have these statements, and then you look at the suspects that are named, and it just doesn't make any sense. It's sort of fragmented thinking. Stephanie says, according to the Scream, it would have been the 26th because she looked at the clock. Absolutely, yes. The Scream suggests that Jonbenet died at about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. Teresa says, you're amazingly gifted, Nick. Wow. That's good to hear. We all benefit from it. Thank you for all your hard work. I love listening to your lives. Well, hopefully Timmy does as well. He's out for the count. Nicole Boutelier, can you touch on Paul Bernardo case in the future? Would love to hear your take on it. I'd really like to do that case. That's the Ken and Barbie killers, right? Happened in Canada as well. That's another case where I've designed a book cover. I've done quite a lot of research. I just haven't been able to kind of extricate myself from all the sort of obligations, SC talks about Daybell. Yeah, we should probably talk about that a little bit, just to say that it's interesting that the prosecutor has asked for a seasoned homicide detective at this point. I think if you follow the letter, I actually meant to do an episode just dealing with the letter that he wrote to the judge, but the impression I get from the letter is that he's already been using Rachel Smith, that she's already been assisting him, and now he's asking formally for her permission to consult. The impression I get is that he needs her to appear in court, and because she's Missouri-based, he needs a temporary permission for her to appear as an out-of-state attorney. And I think what this suggests is it's the and I'm speculating. It just seems likely that this is the or how can I put it? What is going to follow from this are specific charges, and I think if you can't see that, then I just think it's very likely. Why on earth would you have a homicide detective part of your team if you're not going to bring those sort of charges to bear imminently? So Teresa Moore's got a question for Nicole. Do you know Johnny Boutelier? 12-step woman, Nick gets embarrassed with compliments. Lisa Arnold, I'm in Missouri. Okay. I'm not sure if the LinkedIn profile of Rachel Smith is the Rachel Smith, but I'm sure we'll know eventually. Just because I've looked at the LinkedIn profile and it doesn't mention homicides anywhere. It does mention that she's a 35-year-old veteran, so it could be. Elizabeth Jones, Nick, do you ever research Scottish cases? Who's that famous Mary Queen of Scots and Rob Roy? And I've actually written a book that is based in Scotland, but the Scotland of the future. So I'm not sure if I investigate Scottish crimes, but I'm very, I've actually visited Scotland. I went to Eileen Donnan Castle. I'm probably mispronouncing it. But I'm happy to investigate any case that is worthwhile. It's difficult, I guess, to say what that is, but I don't know if you guys know about the crimes that happened in the Galapagos. I'd be very interested to write about that, but I just don't know how many other people are. There's certain cases that you can get very caught up in, but then when nobody else does, there's some difficulty justifying that. A very good example of that is Patrick Frazier. I think that's an incredible trial. It's an incredible story. It's very tragic. It's heartbreaking. It's a very difficult narrative. It's a very trying true crime case, but it's so full of insights, but no one seems to care about it, And so when you do that, you write a book and no one reads it, no one reviews it, you sort of feel you feel not good about it. Did you just hear it to me there? Nicole says, I usually fall asleep listening to his voice. Okay. I'm so intrigued by the Galapagos. Has anyone seen Master and Commander? Such a great movie with Russell Crowe and just really great film. Anyway, part of that plays off in the Galapagos. Bonnie May, thoughts on the Morphew case in Colorado? Bonnie, I really hope that the authorities have got something, because if something isn't announced soon, then it looks like someone is going to be getting away with something. It's very hard for me to imagine that that's the case, but who knows? Julie Secret, hello from Scotland. Julie, just in time for me to sort of wind down. I'm about to say au revoir. You can hear my voice is going. Loved MNC, loved the whole series by that author, over 20 books. Emily King, shared memories of Kensington Palace after Diana died. The smell of roses, all the flowers, the trees with candles. So, Emily, I was probably in the area when you were there. Like, I was nearby when you were in the area. I must say, I remember being in the UK and just, I was sort of kind of counting on, expecting that I was going to see Diana eventually. I was going to just, one day, I was going to be in London, she was just going to sort of drive by. Because I was there in 97, and wasn't that the year that she died? I was there pretty early on, and it was pretty, it was tragic for everybody, but I was really, it was really heartbreaking when she died. Nick, you need a martini, your voice will come back. Yeah. I did actually have a gin and tonic earlier today. Elizabeth Jones, Nick, I live near where Mary, Queen of Scots, was captured. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I must say I love Scotland. I love the history. You can feel history there. I actually went to the Isles of Skye. and I named my villain Sky, Ogilvy Sky, in a fiction book that I wrote about it. So, guys, if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please do. I'm trying to get to 33,700. Broken Dishes, good to see you. Thank you. That's quite a cute little thing there. Thanks very much. Anything else? The Christian Andrea Shio case would be a great book. I need to kind of write down all of these suggestions. Isle of Skye, full of midges. Yeah, maybe I wasn't there longer. I think I was there in summer, so I don't know why I didn't see midges, but thumbs up, everyone. Okay. Julie's secret, I live in the west of Scotland, but I have visited Orkney. I just want to say to everyone in the UK, just that I'm thinking about you. I've got friends that are living in Wales. I know you guys are going through quite a tough lockdown, and quite a lot is happening in the UK. I know that what's going on with the Sarah Everard case is evidence of just how people are feeling about the situation there. I just want to wish you guys my support in terms of, it's we're going through a little bit of a difficult time now. You just got to sort of sit tight. It's not going to be forever. Sometimes it feels that way, but it's not going to be forever. And you just got to find alternative things to keep you busy with. And it's actually an opportunity to do something different, think about something different, explore something different. I'll give you an example from my experience. In South Africa, we've had really bad power failures here, and when the power goes off, I use that time to do gardening or to go to the gym where they've got generators. So, in other words, you don't just sort of wait for it to be over. You use that time in a different way. You see it as an opportunity rather than an opportunity taken away from you. So I just hope you can find the silver lining wherever you are. Sue Cooper says, I've loved the lockdown in the UK. That's good to hear. Said Kierval, hi from New Zealand. Hi, is it Sade? Hi, Sade. I'm about out of here. I'm just really waiting for the clock to count up to 2 hours. Kelly Lane case, Australia. Water polo player with hidden pregnancies and missing murdered baby, ? Charlotte Brooks says, everyone like and share. Lisa Arnold, making the most of your situation. I'm actually thinking about taking a trip to the coast, like next week, and just getting away for a little while. I don't know if my dog senses that. There's a little bit of what do they call it? Is it wanderlust? What is the name of Chris McCandless? I can't quite think of the name, but it just means where you like a vagabond sort of spirit. Have you started packing? He will sense it. No, I haven't started packing. I'm still trying to decide whether I must go and then narrate the audiobook from there, or whether this is going to pass, whether it's just a feeling that's going to pass. I don't know. Jesse Dawn, hey Nick, come to the USA. I actually don't know if South Africans are allowed in the USA right now, given what Corona is doing here. Wanderlust, yeah. Supertramp. Do you remember that Alexander Supertramp? It's a little bit of that spirit where I just want to get in the car and get out into the world and walk on like a really long beach and just be in a different environment for a little while, Jesse Dawn, well, that sucks. Well, I think in time I know they've shut down Florida, so that also sucks. I think when this blows over, then one can travel again. Julie's secret, I'm Scottish with Irish heritage. Cabin fever. I think I am suffering from cabin fever. I kind of get the feeling Timmy is as well. Thelma and Louise, I would love to go to South Africa. It's like all of us just want to be somewhere else, but I think that's normal to feel that way. Julian Morrison says, don't eat the berries. Okay, guys, so I'm at 2 hours. I just really wanted to hit the 2-hour mark. I've got some barbecue chicken. Do any of you guys know Nando's? I've got some barbecue chicken that I made with Nando's sauce that I'm going to be eating just now. Timmy will probably get some handouts from that. So I'm going to be doing that. I'll probably start the Craven Silence 2 tomorrow. So those on Patreon, look out for that. Just for those who aren't on Patreon, I'm doing the Ripper series on Patreon. Those are quite long. They're often about an hour each. Then I'm also doing the Missing Children, dealing with Laurie Vallow. There's about one episode every week on that. And some bonus footage on Jonbenet Ramsey. I'm about to start with another series. I'll probably start that when the Khan's Order series finishes. I will kick off an analysis of an incredible Dateline documentary series on Jonbenet. I've been wanting to get started on that quite soon. I just want to thank my moderators. Stephanie, thank you very much. Thanks very much, guys. Deborah, thank you very much. Okay, guys, wherever you are, you guys in America, you've still got some weekend left. So enjoy your afternoon. Hope you're going to have your weather starting to warm up. I'm out of here. It's 10 to 10 here. At least it's not quite as late as when it was, before you guys moved your clocks back. So I'm going to see if there's something on Netflix to watch and that's it. So thank you everyone for being here. I think it was quite an interesting live, certain aspects of it. So I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.